I was born into faith. From the moment I could understand anything, I was taught the ways of devotion. My family shaped me. My father's voice reciting the Quran every morning, my mother's quiet prayers through tears. I learned early on how to bow my head, how to lower my gaze, how to listen deeply and speak softly. Even before I could grasp the meaning of the words, I tried to follow my father's rhythm, his tone trying to match the steady flow of the sacred verses as he read. I had no real understanding of what was happening, but I knew it was important. I knew God was real. He was worthy, and in his presence, I was supposed to be humble, to be clean. My love for him grew with each passing year, not out of obligation, but because something deep inside my heart wanted to be close to him. I didn't question. I didn't rebel like others sometimes did. I didn't seek shortcuts. I just wanted to be right with him, to be true in my heart. Fasting, praying, giving, it wasn't for show. When I prayed, I wasn't simply reciting lines, I was talking to someone. I believed he was listening. Even when the answers didn't come, I kept speaking. I wasn't perfect. I had days when I felt like I was rushing through the motions, days when I felt distant, even numb. There were times when grief weighed me down so heavily that it was hard to even focus. But even in those moments, I held on. I held on because I believed in his justice. I believed that he knew what was best, even when life seemed to fall apart. Hajj became my dream, a distant hope. As a young girl, I would watch videos of pilgrims walking through the desert, gathered together, praying as one. The image of those thousands moving in unison, there was something about it. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't a spectacle. It was a sight of pure surrender. I promised myself I would stand there too one day. I didn't care about the crowds, the discomfort, the heat. I just wanted to be near him, to walk where so many others had walked before me. But life wasn't easy. Money was always tight, and there were so many things I had to let go of. Still, I worked, saved, and gave what I could. I never married, not because I didn't want to, but because nothing ever felt right. Nothing settled in my heart. My faith became my companion. My evenings were quiet, a cup of tea, the Quran, prayer. It wasn't a chore, it was a longing. Every verse I read felt like a key to something, a door that was waiting for me to open it. But I didn't know what was behind it. I just kept going, knowing that one day it would make sense. Then finally, I had enough for Hajj. I couldn't believe it. I held the papers in my hand, and I wept. Quiet tears, just tears of gratitude, tears of a dream realized. The journey ahead felt surreal. I was about to go to the house of God, to the place where so many before me had walked. The day I boarded the plane, I felt like I was stepping into something bigger than myself. The journey itself was grueling. Every step felt heavy, like my body was being tested in ways I had never known. The sun beat down on me, relentless, and the air was thick with heat. My legs ached and dizziness came in waves, but still, I kept moving. Every step was a prayer. Every breath was an offering. I whispered his name as I walked, the same words I had memorized since I was a child. Here I am, O Allah, here I am. I moved forward, slowly, steadily, just like the others. When I saw the Kaaba for the first time, my heart stopped. My body froze. There, in front of me, was the sacred house, silent, still, its black stone glowing under the desert sun. I had seen it countless times in photos and videos, but seeing it in person was different. It was like everything around me faded, and all that mattered was this moment, this place. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and tears flooded my eyes. I whispered, "You brought me here. You brought me here." I don't know how long I stood there, but time seemed to have stopped. That night, as I lay in my tent, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't the noise, the discomfort, or the heat. It was because I didn't want it to end. I wanted to stay in that moment forever, to stay close to him. It was like everything in my life had led to this one moment. I felt like I was finally where I belonged. The final day of Hajj came. We were all exhausted. The sun was unforgiving. I had a headache that wouldn't go away. My legs trembled under the strain, and still, I pushed forward. People around me were stumbling, sitting, resting in any shade they could find. But I kept walking. I remember reaching for water, but my hand missed the bottle. My fingers felt numb. Then it happened. Everything started to fade. The noise around me became distant, like a muffled echo. My vision blurred, and I stumbled. Someone shouted, and then I was falling. But the ground never came. My body never hit the earth. One moment, I was standing there struggling under the weight of the heat and fatigue. The next, there was nothing. The world fell silent. No sound, no sun, no weight. It was like everything had stopped moving. I opened my eyes, but there was nothing. No pain, no chaos, no discomfort, just stillness. I waited for the sharp pain of the fall, but it never came. I waited for the sounds of the crowd, but they were gone. I didn't know where I was. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't awake. But I knew something had shifted. Something had ended. I was still aware, but there was no heaviness, no pressure in my chest, no burning fatigue. There was no body to feel, no hands to move. I wasn't breathing. It was a strange feeling, like I was still there, but not there. It wasn't fear. It wasn't calm. It was something in between, a quietness that came from the absence of resistance. I wasn't floating like in water, but I wasn't standing either. I wasn't touching anything. I wasn't holding on to anything. I was simply present, existing, but not in the way I had ever known. My first thought was that I must have passed out, that I had fainted from the heat and someone would soon shake me awake, press a cup of water to my lips, maybe rush me somewhere safe, a clinic, a bed, anywhere. But time stretched or bent or broke, I couldn't tell. What felt like moments passed, but nothing shifted. No voices, no footsteps, no weight of ground beneath me. It wasn't darkness, but it wasn't light either. It was a strange substance, soft but dense, like being wrapped inside a living cloud. That is the only way I can say it. I tried to speak, but there was no voice to rise. I tried to move, but there was no body to move. And still I was awake, fully aware, more awake than I had ever been when alive. Then the thought drifted into me, slow but solid. I'm dead. It didn't strike me with panic. It arrived like an old fact I had once known and simply remembered. I should have been afraid. Instead, there was only a deep, steady calm. My mind searched for what was supposed to happen next. I had believed that after death, angels would come. We would be questioned. Our deeds would be weighed and measured. There would be gates and decisions and judgment. I waited for that. I waited for Malik and Nakir. I waited for the doors to open, for a voice to call me. But nothing arrived. Only silence and space. It was not a void. It was not empty. It was full of something I could not name or touch, yet it was there. I tried to shape it with my understanding. All my life, I had believed the soul would move toward punishment or toward paradise. This was neither. It was not burning. It was not bliss. But it was not neutral either. It felt thick with a presence I could not see. The longer I remained, the more aware I became. Not of sights, not of sounds, but of myself. My intentions, my hidden thoughts, my memories rising like shadows into light. Not just the things I had done, but why I had done them. It was as though something had peeled back every layer of me and showed me what had always been there. And still, there was no judgment, only exposure. I was not being interrogated. I was being seen, that was all. I began to wonder if this was the waiting, the barzak, the place between. I searched for shape, for meaning, for some familiar rule, but nothing here moved by the laws I had known. Yet I was not anxious. I was not desperate. I felt still, as if everything here was watching me without harm, like the breath held before a question. Then something shifted. Not a sound, not a light, just a change in the very air, if there was air at all. Something deeper than movement, like the space itself had taken a long breath. I felt it, though I did not know how. The calm did not vanish. It stretched. It widened, making space for something else. I don't know how I understood that. I just did. Something was coming, not rushing, not roaring, but moving with certainty. I had nothing to hold, no form, no footing, no verses to recite. All I had was my awareness. For the first time, I realized that every prayer I had ever spoken, every ritual I had carefully carried out, was not a tool here, not a defense, not even a comfort. They were echoes, soft, distant sounds from a life I was no longer inside. And in their place was something else, something like dissipation, but not the kind born of dread, the kind that signals a moment before everything changes. I couldn't see it, but I felt it coming. The space around me began to pulse, slow, deliberate, like the rhythm of breath, but not mine. I felt small, not with fear, but with quiet, like a child standing at the edge of something vast and endless. Still nothing appeared. No voice spoke my name, no being stepped forward, but whatever it was already here. I could feel it. I could feel him. The first thing I noticed was the change in the atmosphere. Not through sight, not through sound, just a deep shift in the current, like a river turning, and I was caught in it. I became aware of something moving closer to me. Not harsh, not violent, not even straight toward me. It was like warmth slowly gathering before dawn, like a feeling you sense before you can see it. It slipped into my awareness without sound or signal, like the slow rise of a tide you didn't notice was coming. And then it was there, a light. Not the kind that burns your eyes or forces you to turn away. It was gentle, soft in a way that felt alive, soft in a way that drew me forward even though I didn't know where forward was anymore. It didn't speak, it didn't roar, it simply existed, but its existence was so alive that everything about me knew it was aware of me too. As soon as I saw it, I felt it seeing me. It didn't rush, it didn't slow. It moved with a grace I have never seen, like it wasn't even moving at all, just revealing itself, bit by bit, like something opening instead of coming nearer. And something deep inside me, whatever was left of me in that place, reached toward it. Not because I was forced, not because I was commanded, but because I recognized it. Like meeting someone you knew before you were born, like a memory you forgot until it stands in front of you. As it came closer, a feeling wrapped around me, something I had never felt on earth. It wasn't comfort the way we know comfort. It was a fullness, like being held completely, but not with arms. My memories, my hopes, my fears, my whole life, this light touched them all at once without a word. It didn't demand anything. It didn't try to explain itself. It just was. Its presence alone whispered, without sound, "You are safe." And the closer it drew, the more I felt like my whole being was giving way. Not collapsing out of terror, but melting under the weight of purity itself. There was no heaviness, yet I could not stand. No hand pushed me, but I dropped anyway. Knees to nothing, spirit bent low, overcome. I wasn't trying to worship. I wasn't thinking at all. I simply could not remain upright before it. It was too clean, too holy, and yet too familiar. I had never felt so small, not worthless small, but small in the way mountains make you feel small, the way oceans make you understand how big everything really is. All the noise of my life, my work, my worries, my pain, shrunk to silence, and in its place was this light, this presence filling everything. And for the first time, I didn't want to hide. I didn't want to run. All I wanted was to stay close. The light reached me, but it didn't stop at the edge of me. It didn't touch my body. I had no body. It touched my very being. It flowed around me, through me, like breath I wasn't taking, like memory, like a home I didn't know I missed. It filled every space, every emptiness, and I could feel it weaving into me. Then slowly, it began to change. Not quickly, not sharply, but like a thought forming before words, like realization dawning instead of a curtain being pulled back. It wasn't a man walking toward me from fog. It was knowledge. The nearer I was, the clearer it became, not to my eyes, but to my knowing. This light wasn't only light. It was someone. It was Isa, Jesus. But not like any picture I had ever seen. Not the drawings in books, not the movies, not the image of a European man with golden robes or jeweled crowns. He didn't carry a staff. He didn't sit on a throne. He carried something far greater, glory, but not the crushing kind, the revealing kind. He stood without moving, yet everything about him was alive. The air itself seemed to lean toward him. Space glowed not with light, but with his presence. And the way he looked at me, I felt as if my entire existence had never been separate from his gaze. Time didn't live in his eyes. Distance didn't either. Only knowing. I was seen. Every secret I had hidden, every prayer whispered in the dark, every fear I never spoke aloud, all of it lay open before him. Yet there was no shame. That was what undid me. There should have been shame. There should have been fear. I had spent my life chasing God through obedience, through discipline, through ritual, through faith, yet I had never thought God would come this close. And now, in this closeness, there was no condemnation, only a wanting. I didn't even realize I was crying until something inside me cracked open like a dam giving way. Tears without a body, sobbing without sound. It wasn't fear that made me weep. It was the shock of love. Then he spoke. Only one sentence. His voice didn't echo, didn't thunder. It fell softly, like water finding the deepest part of me. You came to my house, but I always wanted your heart. The words didn't wound me. They freed me. They didn't accuse me. They pulled me out of every misunderstanding I had carried. I had saved and prepared for Hajj. I had walked with the crowds, whispered trembling prayers at the Kaaba, given him all I knew to give, my rituals, my devotion, my striving. But I had never given him me, not because I refused, but because I didn't know it was even possible. No one told me the Creator longed for intimacy, that Isa had been near the whole time, waiting for me to turn. I lowered myself further, or tried to. I wanted to vanish into the ground, not because I was humiliated, but because being truly seen felt too heavy to bear. I didn't know if I should worship, or speak, or stay silent. So I stayed silent. He didn't move. He didn't need to. His presence filled every space, made every act unnecessary. There were no verses left to recite, no performance left to give. I was finally before the one my prayers had been reaching for. And for the first time, I stopped performing. I simply was. He didn't speak again right away. He just looked at me. And as he looked, the space around us shifted, not like a change of scenery, more like something hidden began to open from within. It rose inside me not like a thought, but like stepping through a door I didn't know had been there. I wasn't recalling a memory with my mind. I was back inside it, breathing its air, feeling its weight. I was once more a young girl, knees pressed into a woven mat on my bedroom floor. Outside the window, the world was still asleep. The house was dark, silent, holding its breath before dawn. My lips moved over words I had treasured and learned, my hands folded, my body small in the hush. I could see my shoulders lift and fall as I finished, pausing longer than usual, waiting for something unnamed. That longing was tiny but deep, like a hidden spring, and there was a presence in the room even then. I hadn't known who it was. Now I understood why he had been there. Another scene rose and filled me. I was older, fasting during Ramadan, my back against a wall, the ache of hunger and thirst making me dizzy. Yet in the dizziness was a strange, sharp clarity. I had just closed the Quran after reading about mercy. The words pressed on me until I exhaled, overwhelmed by how far away God seemed. I had whispered a plea I barely dared to speak. Show me that you see me. Nothing more. I only needed to know I wasn't invisible. And in this vision, I saw it again, the exact second it happened. A warmth came into the room, but it wasn't heat or a change of air. It was something weightless that filled the space around me without a sound. Now I saw it was him, standing quiet, unseen, as I reached for a God I thought was too high and too far. More memories opened, one by one, like doors I had walked past without noticing. Times I had slipped money to families in need. Times I sat with the Quran, not because I must, but because I longed to know the one behind the words. Times I rose at night when my soul was heavy and I had nowhere else to turn. I saw all these moments again, but now they looked different. They weren't isolated acts. They weren't duties. They were invitations. Each one had been a doorway, and each time he had been on the other side, waiting, watching, responding not with miracles or signs, but with nearness. I had felt it all along. I just hadn't known it was him. I turned toward him, and he looked back. His eyes held no pride, no triumph, only love, quiet and steady, a love that didn't need to prove itself. It humbled me and lifted me all at once. My prayers hadn't been ignored. My discipline hadn't been dismissed. He was showing me now that every step I took toward God was already a step into his presence. The rituals weren't wrong, but they weren't the finish line. They were the path, and he was the destination. The weight of that truth settled on me like a cloak, heavy but not crushing. All my life, I had treated obedience like a ladder. Each prayer, each fast, each good deed was a rung. I believed if I climbed high enough, I would finally reach him. Now I saw he had already come down the ladder. He had walked beside me the whole way. I wasn't climbing up to him. He had always been reaching for me. The memory shifted. I stood again before the Kaaba, remembering the awe, the tears, the trembling in my hands, and he showed me what I hadn't seen. I hadn't been worshiping a building. I had been answering a call to surrender, to draw near not to a place, but to a person. And that person was standing in front of me now. I lowered my eyes, not out of guilt, but out of a kind of holy shame, realizing how little I had understood, how many years I had walked with sincerity, never knowing how close he truly was. I thought of everything I had done to please God, all my attempts to earn nearness. And there he stood, showing me it had always been freely given. He had never been an addition. He had been the center all along. We stood in silence, but But the silence was full. It was thick with something I could not name. Understanding, healing. He hadn't spoken again yet, but I felt it rising, like another wave coming, deeper than the last. Then the scene changed again without warning. I was small once more, maybe 7 or 8, sitting on the carpeted floor of the madrasa, legs folded under me, a small Quran in my lap. Our teacher stood before us, her voice steady, measured, a tone that carried authority. I had respected her, believed she held the answers. Then my own voice came back to me, small and unsure, asking a question I hadn't remembered in years. Why did Isa heal people when other prophets didn't? The room had gone still. A couple of children looked my way. The teacher paused, smiled politely, said it was just a sign that every prophet had his miracle. I nodded, quiet on the outside, but something inside me refused to settle. Even then, even at that age, it felt different. Something about Isa was different. It wasn't only the healing, it was the way he touched people, the way they changed after meeting him. I couldn't say it then, but I could feel it. Now, standing before him, I knew that had been the moment I almost knew. He looked at me with eyes soft and patient, like he had been waiting years for me to remember. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. More snapshots unfolded, nights when I couldn't sleep, staring out the window, aching for something beyond. Mornings after dreams of light and peace that lingered for hours then faded. Prayers when words failed and my hands just rested open, heart raw, feeling something near but unspoken. It had been him all along. His whisper had been gentle, never forcing, never demanding, waiting for me to ask again. I saw myself at 19, walking home after a harsh conversation with someone who mocked my faith. My anger burned, not at them, but at the silence of God. I looked up at the night sky and shouted, "Why won't you show yourself?" I had felt foolish later. But now I saw I hadn't been alone. He had been there, just beyond the veil of what I thought was real. Every longing to be near to God had been answered through his presence. Even when I didn't know his name. Even when I was afraid to say it. Even when I avoided it. "You were never far from me," he said softly. The words didn't shake the space. They didn't need to. They shook me. And in that moment I broke, not out of guilt, but out of recognition. My whole life had felt like a climb towards someone far above me, a long reaching for a hand I couldn't quite touch, never realizing that hand had been on my shoulder the whole time. When the truth finally broke open inside me, it wasn't anger or judgment that came with it, but a kind of grief so soft and deep, it almost felt like a song. Not a punishment, not a scolding, but the ache of years spent trying to buy something that had always been free. And beneath that ache, something began to stir, quiet and alive, like sunlight creeping into a room that had been dark for so long, you forgot what light felt like. I lifted my eyes toward him, and this time I didn't look away. The light around us swelled, not brighter, not harsh, but richer, fuller, like everything I had seen up to this point was only the first brushstroke of a vast painting. He hadn't taken a single step, but suddenly the space shifted and opened wide. It felt as if the veil over my understanding was being pulled back, one thread at a time, and the world beyond it was rushing in. It wasn't a vision in the way people describe dreams or symbols. It was as real as my own heartbeat, as real as the air filling my chest, yet it had no edges, no form. He was showing me something without words, his heart speaking where language failed. And then I saw them, women, so many, from every direction, every time, every color, every age. Some wrapped in scarves like mine, some bareheaded, some dressed in ways I didn't recognize at all. Their faces flickered before me, not one by one, but all at once, each life opening like a window. One was folded on a kitchen floor, face buried in her hands, silent sobs shaking her shoulders. Another sat at the edge of a narrow bed, staring into the dark, her body heavy with loneliness. One wove through a crowded market, eyes lowered, thoughts hidden. Another whispered prayers under her breath while scrubbing a sink, her lips moving faster than her heart. None of them saw what I was seeing, but I saw what they could not. He was there with every single one of them, not observing from afar, not taking notes, not measuring their worth. He was kneeling down, gathering them, holding them, loving them, knowing them so completely that my own breath caught in my throat. These were women like me, women who had been told their whole lives to be enough, to be good, to be quiet, to bear faith and duty and small unseen wounds. Women who tried to pray harder, obey more, endure longer, thinking maybe this would be the day they were finally noticed. And he was already noticing. Not because they succeeded, but because they were his. They weren't calling out for his presence. His presence was already surrounding them, filling the air they breathed. And then I saw myself among them, not raised up, not set apart, but standing shoulder to shoulder with them, one story in a sea of stories. I saw the nights I cried into my pillow, asking if God could even see me. I saw the mornings I put on a brave face, pretending strength I didn't have. I saw every moment I kept pushing through, thinking I had to be perfect to be welcome. I watched it all from somewhere outside myself, and then I felt it for the first time. His heart for me. Not for my sacrifices, not for my long lists of doing, but for my being, just for who I was. I had always believed God was holy and mighty and untouchable, and he is. But I had believed it in a way that kept him far above me, like a king on a throne who tolerated my devotion but never entered my small room. I honored him, yes, but I also trembled before him, not in awe, but in distance. Now I knew better. The heart of God was nothing like the cold space I had imagined. It wasn't a ledger waiting to be filled. It wasn't sitting back waiting for me to earn my way in. It was open, warm, entirely present, not demanding, not measuring, just there. I didn't feel scrutinized. I didn't feel examined. I felt held. And something in me gave way. It didn't crack. It collapsed like a wall that had been built stone by stone my whole life, and finally with one touch, slid down into dust. All the years I had spent believing that love had to be earned, that nearness had to be deserved, that my role was to climb and strive while God remained at the top. All of it was wrong. He had never asked that of me. He had never built the distance. I had built it because I didn't know him. And I wept. I didn't hold back. I didn't try to compose myself, didn't try to make the tears small. They came from somewhere deeper than guilt or shame. They were a release, a pouring out, the kind that happens not when you're punished, but when you're finally met with a love that doesn't flinch, a love that doesn't keep score, a love that doesn't wait for you to qualify. I had never felt more known. I had never felt more safe. And in that moment, I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't want answers. I didn't want explanations. I just wanted to stay. Stay in that presence, in that love, without trying to deserve it, without trying to hold it. For the first time, I wasn't trying to be worthy of God. I was simply letting him love me. And it was everything. I thought it was finished. I truly did. Everything in me had gone quiet. Every question had been swallowed up. Every fear had melted away. Every bit of striving dissolved like smoke. What remained was peace. Not the thin kind of peace that passes quickly, but a deep, steady peace I had never even believed existed. I thought there was nothing more. I had seen him. I had been seen. That was enough. But then he looked at me again, and I felt it. That soft, unmistakable shift in the air. Something was moving. His voice came, calm and steady. "You can stay," he said, "or you can return and tell them what I've shown you." The words didn't echo, but they rooted themselves in me, heavy and light at once. I didn't speak. I didn't even breathe. I just stood there, stunned. I hadn't thought about going back. I thought my body was gone, my life ended, this was the last page. But he wasn't finished. "There are many," he continued, "who know my name but do not know my heart." The words struck me deeper than I expected, like a seed falling into soil I didn't know was waiting. He wasn't pointing to one group, one faith, one tradition. He was pointing to all of us. People who recite the prayers, memorize the verses, walk the path, and yet never meet him, never touch his heart. And I knew exactly what that felt like because I had been one of them. He didn't demand an answer. He didn't rush me. He gave me space even then. In that space, 1,000 thoughts rose and vanished. Would anyone believe me? Would I even have the words to explain what had happened? How do you speak about something like this without it sounding impossible? But beneath all the questions, something else stirred, a clarity like a light under the surface. I had been shown something not just for myself, I had been trusted with it, and now I had a choice. I looked at him, and he already knew. He wasn't pleading, he wasn't pressing, just waiting. And in that waiting, the answer rose up inside me. Not because I was brave, not because I was sure, but because I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I couldn't go back to silence now. Not after this. Yes, I said. It wasn't a shout, it wasn't bold, but it was real, solid. A word I had never spoken to him like that before. I didn't know what it would mean. I didn't know how much time I would have, or what I would say, or who would listen. But I knew I would speak. Because what he had shown me wasn't just mine. It was an invitation, a calling for others too, to know his name and to know his heart.